Imagine a city where the impossible seemed routine, where skyscrapers sprouted from the desert and luxury was sold as a promise of eternity. Now imagine that same city on the brink of collapse, with banks failing, construction projects halted, and investors fleeing in despair. How did one of the richest and most futuristic metropolises on the planet come so close to bankruptcy that the entire world believed it would crumble? This is the story of Dubai in 2008, the collapse of the golden dream. For years, Dubai was a symbol of excess, speed, and limitless ambition. Artificial palm-shaped islands, the world's tallest building touching the sky, hotels with gold interiors, and luxury cars on every corner. The message was clear: here, nothing is impossible. But what few knew was that behind the glitz lay a fragile structure, sustained by debt, speculation, and an almost blind faith in infinite growth. What seemed like an empire of sand was about to face a storm that nearly brought it to ruin. The year was 2008. As the entire world watched the global financial crisis bring down historic banks and entire economies, Dubai discovered that its golden castle also had cracks. What was marketed as a billionaire's paradise began to transform into a nightmare for thousands of investors and workers. Billion-dollar projects were frozen, construction sites were deserted, and silence began to echo where before there had been only the sound of machinery and celebrations. Suddenly, the desert, that had been transformed into an empire of glass and steel, resembled more of a mirage than a real city. But Dubai was never an ordinary place. And that's where this story gets even more interesting. Because while many countries were sinking, Dubai found a way to rise again. And what followed was one of the most impressive turnarounds in modern history. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. The same city that nearly disappeared managed just a few years later to become the center of tourism, innovation, and futuristic architecture worldwide. What saved Dubai wasn't just money, it was mindset. A mindset that defied logic, that believed that even failure could be used as a foundation for the next great victory. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part of this journey, understanding how the collapse of a luxury empire became fuel for one of the most inspiring rebuilds of our time. Behind the headlines and the numbers, there's a truth that almost no one talks about, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Because this isn't just the story of a city in the Middle East. It's a story of vision, risk, and above all, of starting over. It's about the price of greatness, about the fine line between ambition and the abyss. And perhaps deep down, it's also a reflection of ourselves, of how we often need to watch everything crumble before we understand what truly sustains us. Dubai didn't fall overnight. What happened was quieter, almost imperceptible, a succession of bold decisions that together created a tightrope stretched across the abyss of the global economy. The dream of becoming the center of the world came at a price, and in 2008, it arrived. Banks began to deny credit, foreign investors disappeared, and the numbers that once shone on spreadsheets began to turn into nightmares. The city that never slept entered a state of pause, almost denial, trying to understand how the empire of glass and steel could crumble so quickly. But therein lies Dubai's fascinating paradox. The same place that thrives on excess is also driven by an almost stubborn resilience. Just when everyone expected total collapse, something began to change. The city looked at itself, stared at its own reflection in the glass of the skyscrapers, and decided it wasn't the end yet. What was once vanity became purpose. Luxury gave way to strategy, and the desert once again taught an ancient lesson, that survival is an art. While the world saw only debt and failure, Dubai saw opportunity. It restructured companies, renegotiated debts, and with Abu Dhabi's help, found the breathing room to reinvent itself. It was like a quiet rebirth, no fanfare, no victimhood, just vision, discipline, and an unshakable faith in its own ability to start over. And that's why, to this day, this episode is remembered not as the end of a dream, but as the beginning of a new era. What strikes me about this story is how it mirrors so many people's lives. How many times have we built personal empires, projects, relationships, careers, and suddenly everything seems to crumble? But it's precisely in these moments of collapse that essence emerges. It's there, between fear and courage, that the decisions that define who we will be after the fall are born. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what resonated most with this story. I want to know how you see this fine line between failure and starting over. Because every comment, every perspective helps transform this space into something alive, a true exchange of experiences. And if you feel this kind of reflection adds something to your journey, leave a like. It shows YouTube that this content is worth sharing with more people. Your participation here is what keeps this channel growing and reaching those who need to hear this kind of message. So, if you enjoy exploring the human side behind the world's greatest stories, subscribe to continue this journey with me. With each video, each narrative, the idea is always the same: to look beyond the glitter, to understand what lies behind what the world calls success. And now that you understand what brought Dubai to the brink of ruin, I want to show you how this city turned itself around and what it did to become once again a global symbol of greatness and transformation. Before the storm hit, Dubai was experiencing what many called its golden age. It was a time when everything seemed possible, and the impossible was just a detail to be solved with money, technology, and daring. The desert was transforming before the world's eyes, and the city rose as a monument to human ambition. Oil had opened the doors, but it was vision, that almost divine belief that nothing was unattainable, that propelled the Emirates toward a future that seemed straight out of a science fiction film. Skyscrapers sprouted from the ground in a matter of months. The Palm Islands, artificial islands seen from space, symbolized the height of creativity and engineering. The Burj Khalifa, still under construction, was already being called the tower that would touch the sky. It was as if Dubai had decided to compete with God in the art of creating the extraordinary. But the most impressive thing wasn't the luxury itself, it was the speed with which it all happened. In less than a decade, an isolated stretch of sand transformed into one of the richest, most modern, and most desirable cities on the planet. Investors from all corners of the globe arrived in private jets, ready to buy a piece of the dream. Five-star hotels mushroomed, and each new project was announced with more extravagance than the last. Everything shone, everything seemed eternal. But like all intense light, there was a price. Dubai's growth was driven by credit, trust, and an almost blind faith in infinite progress. Money flowed like a river, but it didn't come solely from oil, but from investments, loans, and speculation. It was like a house of cards held together by promises of future profit. While some saw a modern empire, others already saw the warning signs: a bloated real estate market, pharaonic constructions, and an over-reliance on global optimism. The truth is that behind the Persian carpets and golden chariots, there lay a hidden fragility, a vulnerability masked by neon lights and gleaming facades. And yet, at that moment, no one wanted to see the danger. Dubai had become a mirror of the modern world, a reflection of the belief that growth would never end, that all it took was dreaming big to achieve everything. There was an almost collective sense of euphoria, as if the entire city were breathing the same phrase: the impossible does not exist. It was this mentality that guided the Emirates, the idea that the future could be designed from scratch, shaped by desire and courage. But what no one imagined was that this dream was about to be brutally tested. The same wind that lifted the dunes of wealth was beginning to blow in another direction. In 2008, the world would face one of the greatest economic crises in modern history, and Dubai, with all its symbols of power and luxury, would discover that even gold can lose its luster when its foundation begins to crack. When the 2008 financial crisis hit the world, Dubai, until then a symbol of prosperity and boldness, felt the impact like an underground tremor no one had anticipated, but which many silently feared. The city, which had seemed indestructible, began to sway. Suddenly, the gleam of skyscrapers no longer reflected only luxury, but also fear. The lights on construction sites, which had previously never been extinguished, began to disappear one by one. The constant sound of machines and hammers was replaced by an uneasy silence, the silence of a city that, for the first time, doubted itself. The projects that symbolized the height of Dubai's power, towers, islands, marinas, and futuristic avenues, were stalled. Foreign investors who had previously been vying for land and apartments before they even existed were now rushing to flee. The real estate market, inflated by years of euphoria, imploded from within. Prices plummeted in a matter of months, and what was once a dream of global ascension became a debt nightmare. The glass empire began to show its cracks. Dubai World, the state-owned giant responsible for many of the megalomaniacal projects, declared a debt of nearly 60 billion, a sum that at the time seemed impossible to repay. And for the first time, the world looked at Dubai not with admiration, but with suspicion. International newspapers ran headlines asking if this was the end of the desert miracle. Investors who had previously seen the city as the future began calling it the sandcastle of the Middle East. But perhaps what hurt most wasn't the financial losses, but the blow to Dubai's image. Dubai wasn't just a city, it was a brand, a symbol of power, speed, and limitless vision. And suddenly that symbol seemed vulnerable. Cameras that once captured parties on artificial islands and the opening of gilded hotels now captured abandoned construction sites, luxury cars left behind at airports, and workers returning home without receiving their wages. The feeling was of a silent collapse. No one screamed, no one declared bankruptcy in public, but everyone knew the castle was crumbling. And yet, there was something different about Dubai. Even amidst the crisis, the tone of the Emirates' leaders was not one of despair, but of determination. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler who envisioned the Golden Dream, did not hide. On the contrary, he reinforced his faith in a vision that went beyond the crisis. "Deserts teach us a lesson," he once said. "The wind changes, the sand moves, but those who know the way always find the oasis." While the world saw numbers and declines, Dubai saw a lesson. The city that grew by defying physics now needed to defy fear. It was time to reinvent itself, not as a playground for billionaires, but as a center of resilience, technology, and learning. The mindset that built the impossible would be tested again, this time not with concrete and steel, but with patience and strategy. And the curious thing is that amidst the chaos, something began to change. Projects were re-evaluated, plans postponed, and priorities redefined. The glitz of luxury gave way to the search for stability. It was the beginning of a new phase, where Dubai would learn that true power lies not only in building tall, but in standing tall when everything collapses. When Dubai was on the brink of collapse, beset by unpayable debt and shattered international confidence, the desert silence felt heavier than ever. The gleam of the gleaming buildings had lost their charm, and the city that once symbolized the future now found itself a prisoner of its own dream. But it was precisely at this moment that something surprising happened, a gesture that would change not only Dubai's destiny, but also the way the world viewed the United Arab Emirates. As foreign investors withdrew their money and international banks closed their doors, Abu Dhabi, the older, richer, and more stable brother emirate, decided to step in. With a combination of political strategy, trust, and a sense of brotherhood, Abu Dhabi injected some $10 billion to save Dubai from a seemingly inevitable collapse. It wasn't just financial aid. It was an act of faith, a reminder that even in a country built on ambition, a sense of unity was still the invisible foundation that held everything together. This gesture was not without symbolic consequences. At the time, Dubai was preparing for the inauguration of its grandest project, the Burj Dubai, the tower that was supposed to represent the pinnacle of the Emirates' power and self-sufficiency. But with help from Abu Dhabi, history took a different turn. On the night of the inauguration, January 4, 2010, as the entire world watched the fireworks display that lit up the desert sky, an unexpected announcement echoed over the loudspeakers. The tower's name had changed. It would no longer be called Burj Dubai. From that moment on, it would be known as Burj Khalifa, named after Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the ruler of Abu Dhabi and president of the United Arab Emirates, the man who had, quite literally, saved Dubai. That name change was much more than a diplomatic gesture. It was a public confession of gratitude and humility. The city that had built its empire on pride had to recognize that at that moment it could not walk alone. And the most interesting thing is that this was not seen as a sign of weakness, quite the opposite. It was the moment Dubai showed the world that true strength lies not in never falling, but in knowing how to rise again with dignity and intelligence. Behind the scenes, the negotiations were intense. Abu Dhabi imposed conditions, yes, but it also offered confidence. The agreement involved state guarantees, debt restructuring, and an administrative reorganization that redefined the Emirates' financial future. And, contrary to what many imagined, Dubai's pride was not shattered. In fact, it was polished. The episode revealed a hidden truth. The greatness of an empire is not measured solely by its skyscrapers, but by its ability to recognize its own vulnerability and still move forward. The name Burj Khalifa thus became the symbol of unity among the Emirates. It was a tribute, but also a constant reminder that even the greatest need support to continue growing. And perhaps this was the most valuable lesson Dubai learned throughout its journey, that true independence lies not in walking alone, but in building alliances that sustain the impossible. That night, when fireworks turned the sky into liquid gold, marked Dubai's rebirth. Cameras around the world captured only the beauty of the spectacle, but those who understood what went on behind the scenes knew that the brilliance came from something much deeper, the courage to start over. After the collapse and the historic rescue that saved Dubai from bankruptcy, the city could have withdrawn, could have let wounded pride dictate the pace of a slow decline. But what happened was exactly the opposite. Instead of hiding the scars, Dubai transformed them into symbols of learning. It was as if the desert once again proved that sand is not synonymous with emptiness, but with reinvention. Beginning in 2009, a new era began, an era of quiet, calculated, and ambitious reconstruction. The first step was to understand a hard truth. Relying on a single sector, real estate, had been a mistake. The city that once thrived on the glitter of skyscrapers and the promise of easy returns decided to diversify its very essence. Oil, no longer the main driver of the economy, gave way to something even more valuable. Innovation Dubai has repositioned itself as the technological heart of the Middle East, investing heavily in startups, artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and experiential tourism. The idea was simple but powerful. If the world changes, you need to change with it. But Dubai didn't just want to adapt, it wanted to lead the transformation. The government implemented a long-term plan known as Vision 2021, which sought to reposition the country among the most innovative and sustainable on the planet. New projects such as Dubai Silicon Oasis, a smart city focused on technology and research, the Museum of the Future, a temple of ideas that symbolizes the new spirit of the emirate, and the Expo 2020, postponed by the pandemic, but which became a global landmark of reconnection and optimism. Meanwhile, tourism, once merely a supplement, has become the new pillar of the economy. Dubai has learned to sell not just luxury, but experience futuristic hotels, artificial beaches, deserts transformed into spas, and even snowy resorts in the Arabian heat were all part of the same concept. To show that there the impossible isn't a limit, it's a goal. And this mindset spread throughout. Urban policies began to prioritize sustainability, transportation became more efficient, and the city began preparing for the post-carbon future. A future where shine wouldn't come just from gold, but from conscience. And the most impressive thing is that Dubai didn't try to erase the past. On the contrary, it publicly acknowledged its mistake and showed the world that failure can be the foundation of greatness. This transparency was an essential part of the turnaround. While other nations hid the ruins of their financial bubbles, Dubai turned its own into a showcase. It made the collapse a case study and its resilience a trademark. Behind the scenes, decisions were strategic and cold. Debt restructuring was treated as a priority, governance was reformed, and international trust was patiently rebuilt. Each step was based on data, but also on a belief that resilience is more powerful than any petrodollar. And this belief has proven true. In less than a decade, the emirate not only recovered, it grew again with even greater force. Today, Dubai is more than a reflection of luxury. It is a portrait of intelligent adaptation. What was once an oasis for billionaires has become a laboratory of innovation and the future. Mistakes became lessons. Collapse became fuel. The city that once nearly collapsed because it wanted to be the center of the world, now is, but for completely different reasons. And that's what makes Dubai's journey so powerful. It shows that true success isn't born from the absence of failures, but from the ability to get up better with each one of them. The hidden truth is that every transformation exacts a price, and Dubai paid its price with discipline, sweat, and difficult decisions. Behind the scenes of the glitz, there were late-night meetings, cold spreadsheets, near-impossible goals, and a collective mindset of not going back to square one. While the world watched headlines about recovery, ordinary people lived the silent part of the story. Technicians calibrating systems under 45-degree heat, hotel teams reopening spaces with strict protocols, engineers refreshed from the crisis reviewing calculations line by line, and entrepreneurs starting over with less capital and more resilience. None of this made it onto billboards, but it was there that the city's new DNA took shape, an intimate pact between vision and effort, between ambition and prudence. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because the price of reinvention isn't paid just with money. It's paid with choices, often choices that don't show up in the photo. The decision to delay a project to ensure sustainability, the decision to trade speed for consistency, the decision to prioritize local talent and train entire teams to a global standard, and also the decision to communicate to the world a new truth. Value isn't just in the tallest building, but in the invisible system that supports it. This is the least glamorous part and yet the most powerful. There's a human layer that can't be ignored. At every turn of the century, there were long work days, families separated by shifts, personal goals postponed, and a relentless pursuit of recognition. The city learned that status without substance crumbles, and that reputation is built on details. That's why the new Dubai began to measure itself by impact. Waste reduction, energy-efficient projects, technology-serving experience and safety, clearer business policies, and a culture of continuous improvement. It's a shift in mindset. Less spectacle for spectacle's sake, more strategic coherence. This shift also affects collective psychology. When a city nearly collapses and emerges stronger, it redefines the very horizon of possibility. The narrative shifts from "we are rich" to "we are adaptable." It's subtle, but it changes everything. Faith in the impossible becomes a method. Long-term vision ceases to be a slogan and becomes a process. Painful revelations about weaknesses, bubbles, and excesses become decision guides. And better decisions, however invisible, lay foundations for decades. It's the hidden truth few share. Sustainable prosperity is the fruit of well-crafted behind-the-scenes decisions. Ultimately, Dubai remains a mirror. It reflects a desire for grandeur, but now it also reflects responsibility. Luxury remains, but with a different layer of meaning. Hotels, malls, and attractions still shine, but what sustains the light are intelligent systems, attentive governance, and a community trained for excellence. This combination, ambition with a solid foundation, is what prevents the sand from swallowing the castles again. And that's why the city inspires, because it reminds us that starting over isn't about going back to the beginning. It's about moving forward consciously, learning to put each piece in its right place. Dubai nearly fell, and yet it rose stronger than ever. This phrase alone holds one of the greatest lessons on resilience the modern world has ever witnessed. A city built on sand, driven by dreams bigger than any skyscraper, proved that greatness isn't the same as invincibility. It's the ability to start over, even when all seems lost. At the height of the crisis, when the lights began to dim and silence fell over the construction sites, Dubai did what few would dare. It took a deep breath, looked at its own reflection, and decided to keep going. That was the birth of the strength that transformed the desert into a symbol of global resilience. The most impressive thing is realizing that Dubai's true gold was never in its coffers, but in its mindset. The city understood that failure is not the end. It is the beginning of a new architecture, this time built on learning, strategy, and purpose. What seemed like a fall became a rebirth. What seemed like a limit revealed itself as the impetus for something even greater. It's as if Dubai heard the voice of destiny itself saying, "You were not born to be remembered for your fall, but for how you rose." And this lesson applies to us all. How often does life throw us into silent collapses? How often is a fall the push that forces us to build something more solid? Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this story isn't just about economics, luxury, or skyscrapers. It's about identity, choices, and faith in the impossible. Dubai shows us that the world admires not only those who achieve, but also those who have the courage to try again, even under judgment, even under doubt. The city's rebirth was a silent response to those who said, "It's over." And perhaps that's the most powerful message of all. It never ends as long as there's someone willing to try one more time. The city rebuilt itself with purpose, redefined the meaning of success, and proved that sometimes you have to lose almost everything to understand what truly matters. And here comes the human side that most people ignore. Behind the new buildings, the lavish events, and the achievements, there are people, engineers, visionaries, workers, leaders, who carried the burden of a collective dream. People who believed when the rest of the world doubted. People who saw the impossible become reality, not because it was easy, but because giving up was not an option. This is what makes Dubai more than a tourist destination. It makes it a symbol of the mentality that transforms ruins into kingdoms and desert into hope. In the end, what Dubai teaches us is simple and profound. Great kingdoms aren't made of gold. They're made of resilience. They're built on the faith that every fall carries within it the power of a new beginning. So now I want to ask you, and this answer is yours alone. Would you have the courage to start from scratch like Dubai did? Tell me in the comments. If this story inspired you, like it and subscribe to continue traveling with me through this world where luxury, resilience, and purpose meet.